June 6, 1944. Philippines Sea, 200 nautical miles northeast of Luzon. The Japanese convoy Maru 07 steamed through the tropical waters under the protection of 4 destroyers whose crews scanned the horizon with the confidence of hunters who had spent 3 years perfecting the art of killing American submarines. Destroyer Minazuki led the formation, her sonar operators listening for the telltale sounds that would betray enemy submarines lurking beneath the waves that stretched endlessly toward the American bases thousands of miles to the east. 150 feet below the surface, USS Harder, SS-257, moved through the dark water like a steel predator, her crew of 83 men operating in the absolute silence that meant survival in submarine warfare. Commander Samuel David Dealey studied the periscope image with the cold precision of a man who had transformed submarine combat from defensive hiding into aggressive hunting. The Japanese destroyers above represented the kind of targets that most submarine commanders avoided, heavily armed, fast, and specifically designed to detect and destroy submarines like his. The control room of the Harder hummed with quiet efficiency as chief of the boat William Bill Kidwell coordinated torpedo loading procedures while sonar operator Robert Radar Phillips tracked the Japanese formation through hydrophone arrays that could detect enemy ships at distances exceeding 10 miles. Every man aboard understood that they were about to attempt something unprecedented in submarine warfare. A deliberate attack against destroyers whose primary mission was hunting submarines exactly like theirs. Dealey had earned his reputation as the most aggressive submarine commander in the Pacific Fleet through tactics that violated every conventional rule about submarine employment and survival. While other submarine commanders focused on merchant shipping and avoided naval escorts, Dealey actively sought combat with Japanese warships, believing that destroying enemy escorts would leave merchant convoys defenseless against follow-up attacks by other American submarines operating in the area. The Harder's torpedo room contained 24 Mark 18 electric torpedoes, each carrying a 643-pound warhead capable of breaking any Japanese destroyer in half with a single hit. The electric propulsion system eliminated the bubble wakes that had betrayed American submarine attacks throughout the war's early phases, enabling surprise attacks that Japanese sonar operators could not detect until the moment of impact, when detection became irrelevant. At 14:23 hours, Dealey gave the firing order that would transform the USS Harder from a successful submarine into a legend that Japanese destroyer crews would fear throughout the remaining months of the Pacific War. 4 torpedoes left their tubes in rapid succession, their electric motors driving them toward the Japanese formation at 29 knots, while leaving no trace of their passage through the tropical waters that concealed the most successful submarine attack against naval escorts in military history. The first torpedo struck destroyer Minazuki amidships at 14:26:17, the massive explosion lifting the 2,000-ton warship completely out of the water before breaking her back and sending both halves to the bottom within 93 seconds. The Japanese destroyer had no time to transmit warning signals, launch depth charges, or alert other ships in the formation that they were under attack by an enemy they had been specifically trained and equipped to destroy. What would you have thought, watching the hunters become the hunted? The USS Harder, SS-257, represented the pinnacle of American submarine design and construction, launched in August 1942 as one of the Gato-class submarines that would dominate Pacific underwater warfare through superior technology, training, and tactical innovation. The Harder displaced 1,126 tons submerged, measured 301 feet in length, and featured advanced radar, sonar, and communication equipment that enabled operations at distances from base that exceeded anything achieved by German or Japanese submarines during the same period. Japanese destroyer doctrine emphasized anti-submarine warfare as the primary mission for escort vessels that protected merchant convoys and naval formations throughout the Pacific theater. Japanese destroyers like the Fubuki, Kagero, and Yugumo classes featured advanced sonar systems, rapid-firing dual-purpose guns, and extensive depth-charge armaments specifically designed to detect and destroy American submarines that threatened Japanese shipping lanes, essential for maintaining the expanded empire. The psychological foundation of Japanese anti-submarine warfare was based on the assumption that American submarines would avoid combat with heavily armed escort vessels, preferring to attack undefended merchant ships through stealth and surprise rather than engaging in direct combat with warships designed specifically for submarine hunting. This assumption reflected Japanese understanding of submarine warfare as practiced by most naval forces, where submarines served as raiders rather than ship-of-the-line combatants. Commander Samuel David Dealey had graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1930 and spent the pre-war years serving aboard surface ships and learning navigation, seamanship, and tactical command that would later influence his revolutionary approaches to submarine warfare. Dealey's personality combined aggressive tactical instincts with meticulous attention to detail and crew training that enabled him to attempt operations that other commanders considered impossible or suicidal. American submarine training programs had evolved significantly since the early disasters of 1941-1942, when defective torpedoes and inadequate tactical doctrine had reduced American submarines to marginal effectiveness against Japanese shipping. By 1944, American submarines carried reliable electric torpedoes, advanced radar and sonar systems, and tactical procedures that emphasized aggressive attacks against any Japanese target that could be located and engaged successfully. The strategic importance of Japanese destroyers extended far beyond their individual combat value to their essential role in protecting merchant shipping that sustained Japanese military operations throughout the Pacific. Each destroyer represented approximately 300 highly trained naval personnel, advanced weapon systems, and industrial capacity that Japan could not readily replace due to material shortages and shipbuilding limitations that constrained Japanese naval expansion. Japanese destroyer crews had achieved significant success against American submarines during the war's early phases, when American torpedo failures and defensive tactics enabled Japanese escorts to achieve favorable exchange ratios against submarines that attempted to attack protected convoys. Japanese confidence in their anti-submarine capabilities was based on genuine combat success that had sunk numerous American submarines while protecting vital shipping. The tactical revolution that USS Harder would demonstrate represented fundamental changes in submarine warfare doctrine that treated submarines as offensive weapons capable of engaging any enemy target rather than specialized raiders limited to attacks against undefended merchant vessels. This evolution reflected improvements in American submarine technology, crew training, and tactical understanding that had transformed underwater warfare. American industrial capacity had enabled construction of submarines in quantities that exceeded Japanese production by enormous margins, while American training programs produced crews whose technical competence and tactical aggressiveness surpassed Japanese submarine forces that remained focused on traditional approaches to underwater warfare. The quantitative and qualitative advantages created opportunities for tactical innovation that Japanese forces could not match. The intelligence environment favored American operations through code-breaking capabilities that provided detailed information about Japanese shipping schedules, convoy routes, and escort assignments that enabled submarine commanders to position their boats for optimal attacks. Japanese forces operated without comparable intelligence about American submarine movements, creating asymmetric advantages that multiplied American tactical effectiveness. Dealey's approach to submarine command emphasized training, preparation, and aggressive tactics that would enable his crew to achieve results that exceeded anything accomplished by conventional submarine operations. His reputation for success had attracted volunteer crew members who sought assignment to submarines, where they could participate in the most effective anti-Japanese operations in the Pacific Fleet. The technological sophistication of American submarines reflected advances in engineering, manufacturing, and systems integration that exceeded Japanese capabilities despite theoretical Japanese advantages in certain specialized areas like torpedo technology and underwater acoustics. American submarines operated with reliability and effectiveness that enabled sustained operations at distances from base that Japanese submarines could not match. June 6, 1944, 14:23 hours, Philippine Sea. The USS Harder's torpedo room operated with mechanical precision as Torpedo Man First Class Mike Riley supervised the final checks on 4 Mark 18 electric torpedoes that would determine whether Dealey's aggressive tactics would achieve unprecedented success or result in the submarine's destruction. Each torpedo weighed 3,280 pounds and carried enough explosive power to sink any destroyer with a single hit. But accuracy and timing were essential for success against targets capable of evading submarine attacks through superior speed and maneuverability. The Japanese destroyer formation had maintained course and speed for 18 minutes, enabling Dealey to calculate firing solutions with mathematical precision while positioning the Harder for attacks that would achieve maximum surprise and destructive effect. Japanese destroyer Minazuki led the formation at 2,000 yards range, followed by destroyers Hayanami, Tanikaze, and Urakaze in a line-ahead formation that provided optimal protection for the merchant convoy while maintaining anti-submarine search patterns. Dealey's attack plan was characteristically audacious. Fire 4 torpedoes in rapid succession at the lead destroyer, then dive deep and use the confusion caused by the attack to escape before the remaining Japanese ships could coordinate effective counterattacks. The plan required perfect execution and assumed that Japanese anti-submarine procedures would be disrupted by the shock of losing their lead ship to an attack they never detected. Fire control technician Robert Bobby Borland operated the torpedo data computer that calculated firing solutions based on target course, speed, and range data provided by the periscope observations and sonar tracking. The TDC represented advanced analog computing technology that enabled accurate torpedo attacks against moving targets at ranges exceeding 4,000 yards. Providing American submarines with capabilities that exceeded anything available to German or Japanese underwater forces. At 14:23:07, Dealey ordered Fire 1, followed at 6-second intervals by Fire 2, Fire 3, and Fire 4, launching a spread of torpedoes that would cover any evasive maneuvers the Japanese destroyer might attempt when lookouts spotted the incoming weapons. The electric torpedoes left their tubes without the telltale bubble wakes that had betrayed American submarine attacks throughout the war's early phases, creating surprise that proved devastating to Japanese defensive measures. The torpedo run time was calculated at 2 minutes and 14 seconds, during which the Harder maintained periscope depth to observe results while preparing for immediate deep diving that would enable escape from Japanese counterattacks. Dealey watched through the periscope as his torpedoes raced toward their target, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether his boat would achieve legendary status or join the 52 American submarines already lost to Japanese anti-submarine warfare. The first torpedo struck destroyer Minazuki at the junction between her forward engine room and after magazine, creating an explosion that lifted the entire 2,000-ton warship out of the water while breaking her back and causing immediate flooding that doomed the vessel. The detonation was so massive that debris from the Japanese destroyer rained down on the surrounding ocean for more than 30 seconds after the initial explosion. Japanese destroyer crews throughout the formation watched in horror as their lead ship disappeared in a column of fire and smoke, her destruction so rapid and complete that no distress signals were transmitted and no effective damage control measures could be implemented. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Japanese sailors realized they were facing an enemy whose capabilities exceeded their training and tactical preparation. Dealey's second and third torpedoes missed their intended targets due to evasive maneuvers by Japanese destroyers, whose commanders had reacted to the destruction of Minazuki by implementing emergency anti-submarine procedures. However, the fourth torpedo struck destroyer Hayanami in the stern, destroying her rudder and propulsion systems while causing flooding that would eventually sink the ship, despite desperate damage control efforts by her crew. The USS Harder executed emergency deep dive procedures that took the submarine to 350 feet depth within 4 minutes of the torpedo impacts, enabling escape from Japanese depth charge attacks that were hampered by confusion and lack of accurate target location data. Japanese sonar operators could not maintain contact with the submarine that had demonstrated capabilities they had assumed were impossible. The destruction of 2 Japanese destroyers in a single attack represented unprecedented success against naval escorts that had been specifically designed and trained to prevent exactly the kind of submarine attack that Dealey had executed with devastating effectiveness. The tactical implications were enormous. American submarines could now engage Japanese naval forces directly rather than limiting their attacks to undefended merchant shipping. Japanese survivors from both destroyers provided testimony that confirmed the psychological impact of submarine attacks that seemed to appear from nowhere and achieved devastating results before effective countermeasures could be implemented. The fear and demoralization created by the USS Harder's attack would influence Japanese naval operations throughout the remaining months of the Pacific War. The immediate tactical result was the withdrawal of the remaining Japanese destroyers from convoy escort duties to search for the American submarine that had demonstrated capabilities exceeding anything in Japanese intelligence files. This withdrawal left the merchant convoy defenseless against follow-up attacks by other American submarines operating in the area, multiplying the strategic impact of Dealey's initial success. Radio communications between Japanese naval units revealed confusion and alarm about American submarine capabilities that had achieved results considered impossible by Japanese anti-submarine doctrine. Japanese commanders requested additional escort vessels and modified operational procedures based on the assumption that American submarines posed threats to naval ships that had previously been considered immune to submarine attack. Within 6 hours of the attack, Japanese naval headquarters had issued new operational directives that emphasized dispersed formations, increased sonar vigilance, and modified convoy procedures designed to counter American submarine tactics that had proven devastatingly effective against previously successful defensive measures. These changes acknowledged that fundamental assumptions about submarine warfare had been invalidated by American technological and tactical superiority. The USS Harder's success against Japanese destroyers established a tactical precedent that would be repeated by other American submarines throughout the remaining months of the Pacific War. Dealey had proven that aggressive attacks against naval escorts could achieve strategic results that exceeded the value of conventional attacks against merchant shipping, fundamentally altering American submarine doctrine and operational planning. Within hours of the USS Harder's devastating attack, Japanese naval communications carried urgent reports describing American submarine capabilities that exceeded every assumption about underwater warfare and defensive vulnerabilities of naval escort vessels. The destruction of 2 destroyers in a single engagement challenged fundamental Japanese beliefs about the protective value of anti-submarine warfare training and equipment that had proven effective against previous American submarine attacks. The psychological impact on Japanese destroyer crews was immediate and profound, creating fear and uncertainty that spread throughout the Imperial Japanese Navy's escort forces faster than official intelligence reports could distribute tactical warnings. Japanese sailors who had confidently hunted American submarines suddenly found themselves questioning the effectiveness of their weapons, training and tactics against enemies who had demonstrated devastating capabilities that seemed to exceed the laws of underwater warfare. Japanese naval intelligence struggled to analyze the attack reports that described American submarine tactics and weapons performance that challenged every assumption about the limitations of underwater forces against surface warships. The speed and completeness of destroyer destruction suggested American torpedo technology and tactical capabilities that exceeded Japanese understanding of submarine warfare possibilities. The strategic implications became apparent as Japanese convoy operations required fundamental revision to account for American submarine threats against escort vessels that had previously been considered immune to underwater attack. New escort procedures emphasized larger destroyer formations, modified search patterns, and enhanced communication protocols designed to counter American submarines whose capabilities had been dramatically underestimated. American submarine commanders throughout the Pacific Fleet received detailed reports of Dealey's success that transformed their understanding of tactical possibilities and operational objectives. The demonstration that destroyers could be attacked successfully encouraged more aggressive approaches to submarine warfare that would multiply American effectiveness against Japanese naval and merchant shipping throughout the remaining months of the conflict. The industrial implications were enormous as Japanese destroyer losses accelerated beyond replacement capacity, while American submarine production continued increasing at rates that enabled sustained offensive operations against targets that Japanese forces could no longer adequately protect. The loss of experienced destroyer crews represented irreplaceable losses of trained personnel whose skills required years to develop. Medical facilities throughout the Japanese naval system began treating survivors whose accounts of submarine attacks described weapons and tactics that seemed to exceed rational possibilities for underwater warfare. The testimonies consistently emphasized the speed and surprise of American attacks that provided no warning and enabled no effective defensive response from ships specifically designed to counter submarine threats. American naval intelligence services documented the propaganda value of destroyer attacks that demonstrated American technological and tactical superiority to neutral observers and Allied forces operating throughout the Pacific theater. The success stories provided evidence of American capabilities that contradicted Japanese propaganda about superior naval technology and training. Japanese defensive doctrine underwent emergency revision as naval commands attempted to develop countermeasures against American submarine tactics that had proven devastatingly effective against previously successful anti-submarine procedures. New regulations emphasized deeper escort formations, improved sonar coverage, and modified operational procedures designed to minimize vulnerability to surprise attacks. The morale impact within American submarine forces was enormous, as crews gained confidence in weapons and tactics that provided overwhelming advantages over Japanese defensive systems. Submarine commanders who had previously operated with caution due to Japanese anti-submarine effectiveness suddenly felt empowered to attempt operations that would have been considered impossible before Dealey's demonstration of destroyer-killing capabilities. Allied naval forces worldwide began requesting detailed information about American submarine tactics and technology that had achieved such dramatic success against Japanese escort vessels. British, Australian, and Dutch commanders recognized that American approaches to submarine warfare provided capabilities that could be applied against German and Italian naval forces operating in other theaters. The economic consequences extended beyond immediate ship losses to broader questions about Japanese naval strategy and resource allocation in an industrial war that Japan could not sustain against American productive capacity. Each destroyer lost represented approximately 2,000 tons of steel, months of skilled shipyard labor, and years of crew training that Japan could not replace at rates necessary to maintain effective convoy protection. Japanese prisoner interrogations revealed consistent patterns of fear and demoralization among destroyer crews who had survived submarine attacks that demonstrated American capabilities exceeding Japanese technological and tactical understanding. The psychological warfare value was enormous as fear of American submarines began affecting Japanese naval operations throughout the Pacific. The tactical revolution initiated by USS Harder influenced American submarine doctrine for the remainder of the war as aggressive attacks against naval escorts became standard procedure rather than exceptional operations. The success of destroyer attacks encouraged tactical innovation that would maintain American submarine effectiveness against Japanese countermeasures. The cultural impact within Japanese naval forces was profound, as the confidence and aggressive spirit that had characterized Japanese destroyer operations since Pearl Harbor began giving way to defensive caution and uncertainty about American capabilities that seemed to exceed every assumption about submarine warfare limitations. The overwhelming success of USS Harder's attacks against Japanese destroyers triggered systematic revision of American submarine doctrine that emphasized aggressive engagement of all Japanese naval targets rather than the previously cautious approaches that had limited submarine operations to attacks against undefended merchant shipping. The demonstration that destroyers could be successfully attacked and destroyed fundamentally altered American understanding of submarine capabilities and tactical possibilities. American submarine manufacturing accelerated production of advanced submarines equipped with improved radar, sonar, and torpedo systems that enabled sustained operations against Japanese naval forces at distances from base that exceeded anything achieved by previous submarine campaigns. The industrial capacity enabled simultaneous construction of multiple submarine classes optimized for different tactical missions, while maintaining the technological superiority that had proven decisive against Japanese anti-submarine defenses. The technological innovations demonstrated by USS Harder's success included advances in torpedo technology, fire control systems, and underwater navigation that established American leadership in submarine warfare capabilities. The Mark 18 electric torpedoes that had achieved such devastating results represented manufacturing and engineering excellence that exceeded German and Japanese torpedo technology, despite theoretical advantages those nations possessed in certain specialized areas. Japanese attempts to counter American submarine threats through improved destroyer design and anti-submarine tactics were hampered by industrial limitations and material shortages that prevented rapid implementation of defensive improvements. Japanese shipyards could not replace destroyer losses at rates necessary to maintain effective convoy protection, while crew training programs could not produce experienced personnel fast enough to maintain operational effectiveness. The strategic implications of American submarine success against Japanese destroyers extended far beyond immediate tactical victories to fundamental questions about naval strategy and the protection of maritime supply lines essential for Japanese military operations. The loss of destroyer protection left Japanese merchant shipping vulnerable to submarine attacks that would accelerate the economic strangulation of the Japanese Empire. International recognition of American submarine capabilities influenced Allied naval planning, as British, Australian, and other Allied commanders sought to incorporate American tactical innovations and technology into their own submarine operations. The global demand for American submarine expertise established American leadership in underwater warfare that would persist throughout the Cold War and beyond. The research and development infrastructure created to support American submarine operations enabled advances in underwater technology, navigation systems, and weapons technology that would influence military and civilian applications for decades. The expertise gained through submarine warfare provided foundations for post-war innovations in oceanography, underwater exploration, and marine engineering. Post-war analysis revealed that American submarine operations against Japanese destroyers had achieved strategic results that exceeded Japanese comprehension during active combat operations. Japanese naval planners never developed effective countermeasures against American submarine tactics that combined technological superiority with tactical innovation and aggressive operational procedures. The economic advantages of American submarine operations were demonstrated through cost-effectiveness analyses that showed superior results per dollar invested compared to alternative approaches to naval warfare. The total cost of submarine operations was significantly lower than equivalent capabilities provided through surface naval forces or aviation, while achieving greater strategic impact through direct attacks on Japanese naval capabilities. The lessons learned from destroyer attacks influenced American military thinking about technological innovation, tactical flexibility, and the importance of maintaining industrial capacity that could support sustained operations against enemies who possess significant defensive capabilities. American commanders recognized that technological superiority provided strategic advantages that enabled smaller forces to achieve decisive results against larger opponents. The technological foundation established by submarine warfare enabled American advances in underwater systems, guidance technology, and precision weapons that would dominate post-war military development. The expertise gained through attacking heavily defended targets established principles that guided American military technology development throughout subsequent conflicts. The production techniques developed for submarine construction and weapons manufacturing were applied to other military and civilian industries after the war, creating technological advantages that supported American economic growth while establishing global leadership in marine technology and underwater systems. The transformation of USS Harder from a conventional submarine into the most feared destroyer killer in naval history demonstrated the power of aggressive leadership and tactical innovation to revolutionize underwater warfare and establish new paradigms for submarine employment against heavily defended targets. Commander Dealey had proven that submarines could successfully engage the very ships designed to destroy them, fundamentally altering the strategic balance of Pacific naval warfare through audacious attacks that exceeded every assumption about submarine limitations. The irony was historically profound and strategically decisive in ways that extended far beyond individual engagements to fundamental questions about naval power and the vulnerability of surface ships to underwater attack. Japanese destroyers that had been specifically designed and trained to hunt American submarines discovered that they had become the hunted, stalked by an enemy whose capabilities exceeded their defensive preparation and tactical understanding. The human dimension of this transformation revealed truths about courage, innovation, and the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom in pursuit of tactical advantage that could determine campaign outcomes. Dealey and his crew had demonstrated that conventional assumptions about submarine warfare could be overturned through aggressive tactics, superior technology, and tactical excellence that transformed defensive weapons into offensive instruments of overwhelming power. The strategic implications extended far beyond submarine warfare to fundamental questions about naval strategy, technological innovation, and the sources of tactical advantage in modern maritime conflict. American success with destroyer attacks proved that creative tactical thinking could overcome apparent disadvantages while achieving results that conventional approaches could never accomplish. The ultimate testament to American achievement lay in the speed and completeness with which USS Harder's success transformed Japanese naval operations and American submarine doctrine, creating tactical conditions that favored American operational approaches while negating Japanese defensive advantages that had been carefully developed through years of anti-submarine warfare experience. The destroyer killer showed the world that in war, even the hunters can be hunted, demonstrating that technological superiority and tactical innovation could overcome any defensive system when applied with sufficient skill and determination. The legend of USS Harder proved that individual excellence could achieve strategic results that exceeded the capabilities of entire fleets when guided by visionary leadership and supported by superior technology. Stories like this reveal how American naval innovation could transform apparent tactical limitations into overwhelming advantages that redefined the possibilities of underwater warfare while establishing American dominance in submarine operations that would persist for generations. The legacy of USS Harder continues to influence submarine tactics and demonstrate the power of aggressive leadership to achieve impossible results through superior preparation and tactical excellence. Would you have dared to face the destroyer killer? The submarine that hunted the hunters proved that in the vast Pacific, even the most feared predators could become prey when confronted by American ingenuity and determination. Subscribe now to uncover more untold stories of World War II.